When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest. He would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. And when I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad. Miracles don't happen still, but now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, better magic trick is that anything is here at home. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely wet my fingertips. Now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Testament, that'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come, say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I stood, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then. Everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now.
Good morning. Welcome to United First Parish Church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are on your journey, Welcome to our Unitarian Universalist spiritual community. We are delighted to welcome anyone who may be visiting with us this morning. You can learn more about our community by going to our website, www.ufpc.org. I'm the Reverend Rebecca Froom. Our worship leaders this morning on screen and behind screen are Joan McDonald, our Director of Religious Education, and Fiona Sankey. The order of service this morning can be found by clicking on the link Joan has pasted into the chat. For our online worship services, we invite you to go ahead and leave your video on so that we might see one another if we click on gallery view, even though we are physically apart. Note that we are recording this morning's service to be posted on YouTube at a later date. If you would prefer not to be seen in the recording, please turn off your video. And if at any point this morning you are having a poor internet connection, we encourage you to turn off your video to see if that improves things. And we invite everyone to stay online after the service for our virtual social hour. It's a bring your own coffee and tea phenomenon. This morning, our social hour will include the option of breakout groups to reflect on the theme of today's service. And now let us center ourselves for worship, taking a deep breath together, feeling that spirit of life and love that moves within, between, and beyond us all. Our call to worship today is by Jeff May. Come, gather, not into a common space, sharing a physical closeness we long for, precluded by wise choice. But come, gather in this common time and common space. We need to be together. We yearn for connection. We hunger for the familiar faces of friends, the sound of shared voices proclaiming who we are, where we are going, that which resonates with our hopes, our dreams, our values. Come, gather. We are here in this space made of all spaces, and we share our becoming in this moment.
Our chalice lighting this morning, we're asking everybody to take the chalice they might have at home, whether it's a battery operated light or a candle. And we are in gallery view so that we can see each other as we light our chalices together. And these words come from a very tiny little book called Sunday and Everyday, My Little Book of Unitarian Universalism. And this is a very common chalice lighting for children. It goes, we are Unitarian Universalists with minds that think, hearts that love, and hands that are ready to serve. Together we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in our world. And if you will now join us in reading our covenant together. That is on the screen. As a free fellowship of this historic church, we unite to lift our hearts and open our minds to a larger reality, to accept, support, and encourage one another, to seek the wisdom in all religions, and to cherish and sustain the web of life, and to strive for justice, compassion, and peace. And next, if you join us for our hymn, Gathered Here, the words are on the screen.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, spirits draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in the mystery of the body, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in the mystery of the body, gathered here in the struggles and the body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in the mystery of the body, gathered here in the struggles and the body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near.
Good morning. I titled my message for all ages this morning, Creating Sabbath Space at Home. I'm hoping that many of you may have picked up at church or had delivered to your home the spiritual toolbox that Reverend Rebecca and I put together over the last couple of weeks. And so I wanted to start by opening up the bag. In this case, it's a tool bag, and what you can find in it. So the first thing is a piece of cloth, and it might be blue or maroon. And with it, there came a pen, a special pen that would write on fabric. And so if you had the Spirit move you, you might take your pen and draw pictures and create an altar cloth that, if I try and show it, so you can draw pictures on your altar cloth. Things, they could be pictures, they could be words that are special to you. And that is the beginning of creating the kind of the altar table, or maybe a corner or a shelf, or in some cases, maybe you have a special box. This is a box that my father-in-law made. And so inside of it, I have a chalice, and I was working in the studio, and so I created a little chalice. And so the chalice can go on the altar cloth. And if you think about our chalice, it represents our faith, and it brings our faith into our home. And one of the things that we're trying to do as the church year goes on is that trying to bridge the gap between being at church and being at home right now. And that one of the things about our faith is that it's never just about the building, it's about the people who are in it, and it's about what we do in the world, so that our own altar cloth kind of brings us into church, but brings church into our homes and how we carry it out in the world. So then inside the bag as well were 2 candles. One is a real candle that you can light, and the other is a battery operated one. That will be easier to do right now. So you pull out that little separator and you can light the chalice with the candle. So what else did we put in the bag? So Reverend Rebecca said a stone, and it was hard to find stones small enough. And when I was looking around, I found these wonderful little glass pebbles. And on the back of the glass pebble, I drew a chalice with a flame. And let's see, oops, I've dropped it now. So that's something that you could hold in your hand. You might keep it in your pocket. It could be something that carries your worries or connects you into sacred space. Then what else did we have here? We put in a little notebook so that you might, during your time that you create your altar, you might share what you're feeling, you might share joy, you might share challenges that are happening in your life, you might share a poem about how you're feeling and what's going on in your life. And that can be special to you. And anybody who would like an extra book or even an extra stone, glass pebble, please let us know because we have extra ones. One of the other items in here was a special little note of love from Reverend Rebecca and I that says, "You are loved and loving. You carry the flame today and always." And finally, we have an envelope with a variety of things, a message from Reverend Rebecca and I, a beautiful poem about how the church left the building, but the church never leaves us, and some ideas on how to create your own chalice if you don't have one already. And one of the things that we do to help us center ourselves and to get into that place where we want to be is, let's take a deep breath together as we enter a time for joys and sorrows.
Through the sharing of our joys and sorrows, we create a sacred space where we are present with one another and our own hearts. This is a time for us to briefly share those life milestones that lift our spirits in joy or hope, or those pains and losses that fill us with heartache. As we enter this time of sharing, I will light a candle of joy, knowing that a joy shared is a joy magnified, and also a candle of sorrow, knowing that a sorrow shared is a sorrow diminished. If you wish to acknowledge a sorrow or joy from your heart, I invite you in just a moment to raise your hand and unmute your mic when our digital usher, Fiona, calls you by name. So let us open our hearts to one another.
It looks like Daphne would like to share. Good morning, everyone. I have a joy to share on
Presenting all of those joys and all of those sorrows that we hold silently in our hearts. I had a human moment there. So let's return to that breath. Remembering that these candles remind us that wherever we are on our journeys, each of us are worthy of love, and each of us are able to love. Let us take a deep breath together, feeling that spirit of life, that spirit of love that moves within, between, and beyond us all. Let us take a deep breath together, perhaps rolling our shoulders back, moving our necks, wiggling our fingers and toes, releasing at least a little bit of tension from our bodies, and breathing together, even though we are far apart. Let us share a moment of silence. Will you lift your hearts and join me in the spirit of prayer, listening in these words for the language of faith most meaningful to you? Eternal presence, known by many names, known in many ways. We gather this morning, each of us fragile, each of us strong, each of us broken, each of us whole. In this time when we are so aware of our mortality, let us also pause, take a deep breath, and remember our vitality. We give thanks for the joys of our lives, for birthdays, for anniversaries, for the ways in which we witness, support, mourn with, and encourage those we love. Even when we are separated by distance, let us remember that love, connection grounded in love, can cross all borders. We open our hearts to all of those who are struggling with their health, facing challenging diagnoses, recovering from surgery, all of those facing challenges in their physical health, their mental health, seeking to recover from illness, seeking to recover from addiction. May we remember that in times of sorrow, in times of change, in times where we are perhaps dancing on the brink of death, a little kindness can sometimes truly save lives. source of our being, source of our goodness. In this time when the twin pandemics of COVID and racism continue to rage all around us, in this time when fires still burn throughout the West and so many other corners of this world, let our hearts break open in lament. Let our hearts break open in rage, depression, loss, honoring whatever we may be feeling. And with our hearts broken open, let us reach beyond the pain that is so valid. Reach beyond that pain for hope, for love, for the courage to start again and again, one day, one step at a time, bringing a little more healing to the communities of our planet, a little more healing to the planet itself. Facing all of these pandemics around us, with open hearts, let us remember, in the words of Abraham Joshua Heschel, few are guilty, but all are responsible. May we have the courage to look at the oppressions and injustices that surround us without closing our hearts in guilt, defensiveness, shame, or apathy. May we look with compassion and courage at all we have and have not done to embody our values. May we look with compassion and courage to see all of the things that we still can do to speak our truth in love and to work to build the world we dream of. We pray this in love's name. Amen, and blessed be. Will you join me in singing our reflection hymn, Voice Still and Small? The words are on the screen.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
In the 1820s, when our congregation was designing our current building, John Adams described his vision of this new church home, a church that would be a temple for the public worship of God. And thus our congregation built and moved into a building that became known as the Stone Temple. And now, we, like so many people, find ourselves a people without a temple. And as I have contemplated this reality of 2020, I've looked to the Jewish tradition, a tradition that remade itself millennia ago when they lost their temple. What we now know as Rabbinic Judaism develops about 2,000 years ago, after the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70 in the Common Era. When the temple was built, it was the center of Jewish religious life. There were rituals centered on the temple, pilgrimages, so much connected to the temple. And when the temple was destroyed, those rituals moved into the home. Priests were replaced by rabbis, teachers that brought people together in synagogues, teachers who supported people in living their faith at home. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, a 20th century theologian, talks about Judaism as architecture in time. His daughter, Susanna Heschel, who's also a scholar and an author, wrote, "My father defines Judaism as a religion centrally concerned with holiness in time." Now, Heschel was a 20th century Polish-born American rabbi, leaving Europe and coming to the United States in 1940, such a moment of fear and terror. He was a scholar, an author, a professor. He believed that the teachings of the Hebrew prophets were a call for social action and was involved in the American Civil Rights Movement and the movement against the Vietnam War. You may not have read his theological works, but you've probably seen his picture. Iconic photos of Heschel walking arm in arm with Martin Luther King Jr. and other religious leaders in the famous March from Selma to Montgomery, a powerful display of interfaith cooperation and work for civil rights. Like Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Joshua Heschel's faith-based activism was grounded in his life of prayer, his spiritual practice. For Heschel, the Jewish tradition of the Sabbath was one of the most important aspects of Jewish life, the keystone of this architecture in time. He talked about the Sabbath as a palace in time, writing, "The seventh day is like a palace in time, with a kingdom for all. It is not a date, but an atmosphere." What atmosphere? An atmosphere of praise and wonder, of saying life need not be focused on doing, life need not be focused on stuff. Life is about time, of finding the preciousness, the holy, the beauty in time, to find that which is worthy of worship. And worship, in our Unitarian Universalist parlance, is a focus on that which is worth. The Sabbath, in separating time from the normal busyness of life, opens up a new space to be filled with the sacred, the spirit, the praise, the wonder. Now, time has been a funny thing these last 7 months. I remember in March and April where so many of us woke and said, what day is it? Monday, Thursday, what day of quarantine? The 11th day? There was so much that had changed about time. With people working from home or their kids being at home, the idea of what's work time, what's personal time became fluid. We've lost so many markers of time by the ways in which we move through physical space, becoming so very different. So how do we create an atmosphere of wonder and sacred space in this strange time where our ordinary rituals, our ordinary activities of daily living have in many ways been displaced? As I've thought through this topic of our spiritual home beyond our stone temple, I return to the importance of sacred space. Sacred space being something that is at the intersection of physical place and time. And ritual is one of the ways that we open up this sacred space. Physical acts like lighting candles of joy and sorrow are a way of marking a time for sharing from the heart. So tactile ritual invites us to build a sacred architecture in time, invites us to have time to focus on what matters, not just the fear and anxiety of the news, the very real challenges of how to care for and feed our very families. There is so much pain and loneliness and isolation in our hearts and our communities now. Sacred space lets us name those experiences, honor them as part of life, and seek out the larger love, that atmosphere of wonder and connection that exists beyond the fear. So here we are, October 2020, a people without our stone temple. And as a people who draw from many wisdom traditions, we're also a people without a shared Sabbath. It's been a couple centuries since everyone stopped working and came to that church in the center of Quincy for 2 hours in the morning and another 2 hours in the afternoon for the Puritan Sabbath, which wasn't really about joy. So now in 2020, as a theologically diverse tradition, how do we create sacred space? And one of the ways that we can do that as Unitarian Universalists is through the lighting of a chalice. The lighting of a chalice is a ritual that marks a time as important, as different from regular time, not in some sort of cosmic, metaphysical way, but in the turning of our attention to what happens between the lighting of the chalice and the extinguishing of the chalice. Of course, we do this in the shared communal experiences of worship at the beginning and end of a religious education program, our small group ministry gatherings, our business meetings where we turn to that important work of democratic governance of our congregation. And lighting a chalice is also a ritual we can do at home with ourselves as individuals, with the members of our household, whoever they might be. If you have a cat or a dog, you might want to use an electric candle so that their tail does not interfere with the ritual of our flame. Over the course of my life, I have lit a chalice in my own home in a variety of ways over the years. For a while, I would light a chalice and sit down to write in my journal, perhaps reading a poem before beginning that writing. Sometimes I light a chalice not just to deliver a sermon, but to write one, to remember that we are creating sacred space in how we use words or the arts to articulate the human experience. Sometimes I light a chalice before sitting in meditation. And sometimes I even light a chalice before a challenging phone call, remembering that finding words to face loss, finding words to bridge divisions is also sacred work worthy of our attention. And when I am lighting a chalice in my own home, it's both an individual act and it's a communal act. It's a reminder that Unitarian Universalists across the continent, across the world, are lighting chalices to bring ourselves into time dedicated to the worthy. And so I want to end our sermon this morning By reading one of those poems that was in your spiritual toolbox, the poem, "The Church Has Left the Building," by the Reverend Margaret Weiss. The church is not a place, it is a people. The church is not only a steeple above the tree-lined streets and cars, rather it is a people proclaiming to the world that we are here for the work of healing and of justice. The church is not walls built stone upon stone, held together by mortar, but rather person, linked with person, all ages and genders and abilities. A community built on the foundation of reason, faith, and love. The church is not just a set of doors open on Sunday morning, but the commitment day after day and moment after moment of our hearts, creaking open the doors of welcome to the possibility of new experience and radical welcome. The church is not simply a building, a steeple, a pew. The church is the gathering together of all the people and experiences and fear and love and hope in our resilient hearts, gathering however we can to say to the world, welcome, come in, lay down your heartache, and pick up hope and love. For the church is us, each and every one of us together, a beacon of hope to this world that so sorely needs it. Friends on the journey, when we light our chalices on Sunday morning or at other times in our lives, may we create those spaces of love and hope in our resilient hearts. May we build palaces in time in which we can lay down our heartache and pick up that hope and love. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Please join me in singing our hymn, "For All That Is Our Life." The words will be pasted in the chat.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our
We drink from wells we did not dig, and we sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. As recipients of all we have received from those who have come before us, we're called to share our abundance with those who will come after us. As a voluntary association, our church is sustained through the gifts of the members and friends of this congregation. Your generosity makes it possible for us to hold online worship services, workshops, and small groups, even in these unusual times. Your generosity allows us to be faithful stewards of our historic building so that it will continue to be a place of sanctuary and learning when it is once again safe to gather in person. Your generosity helps us strive for justice and live our congregation's values in the wider world. Please take this moment to visit our website and consider clicking on the donate button located on the homepage of the website, ufpc.org. Let us open our hearts as these gifts to support the good works of the United First Parish Church are joyfully given and gratefully received.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the red garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Our congregation gathers in many ways for worship, creative expression, and for the life and leadership of our community. So a few announcements. Today, we are having our social hour after this service, our virtual social hour with breakout groups. The prompts will be, what is nourishing you these days? How are you creating sacred space or time in your home life? And our main Zoom room will have general discussion. So if you don't want to answer those prompts, you can stay in the main room. And today we are going to end our social hour by 11:55 because the writing group is meeting at 12 noon, led by Jim Petosa. So you can just stay on this Zoom call for that or sign back in at 12. For this week, our small group ministry, Soul Matters small group ministry registration is happening online. And I'm hoping people can sign up for those by tomorrow will be the first round. I just put the registration link in the chat, and that will let us choose which times, and then we'll have a second round of registration once the times are confirmed. And also this week, we encourage you to pick up spiritual toolboxes so you can create your own space of ritual in your home. You can contact David in the church office for a time to stop by the church and he'll meet you outside. or you can request delivery, and Joan and I will bring those spiritual toolboxes to you or the post office will. And our ongoing programs include our religious education, children's chapel videos. The link for that is in the chat as well. Joan posts those every Thursday, and folks of all ages can watch them, though they're targeted for younger children. And our Black Lives Matter standouts are continuing to happen on Thursdays from 3:30 to 5:30, a venture that is co-hosted with Quincy for Transformative Change. Come for 20 minutes, come for the full 2 hours, and lift our moral voice of witness for the importance of Black lives. And then looking ahead, save the date for, we're going to have some apple festivals to come together in community around apples. There is one apple festival on Zoom on Tuesday the 13th, and another that will be in person on Sunday, October 18th. The time of that and the particular COVID safe guidelines for that in-person gathering are still to be determined. So the details of that are in the announcements that were emailed to the congregation earlier this week. So now let us return to that breath, that place in the body where we remember that life moves within, between, and beyond us. That breath which can guide and ground us wherever we are. Our benediction this morning is adapted from the words of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. There are no 2 hours alike. Every hour is unique and the only one given at the moment, exclusive and endlessly precious. Let us learn to be attached to holiness in time. Learn how to consecrate sanctuaries that emerge from the magnificent stream of a year. Having spent this hour in beloved community, let us depart to embrace the precious hours before us, knowing that the love of this community goes with us. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Let us go in peace and go in love, and together extinguish our chalices, singing the words that are appearing on your screen. So Joan is going to set up a few breakout groups for us to reflect on the question, what is nourishing you these days? How are you creating sacred space or time in your home? I'll paste those prompts into the chat, and I hope you will enjoy being in our virtual social hour together.